My guest today is a chartered psychologist, neuroscientist, and sleep expert. As well as being a mother of two children, she has a doctorate from the University of Oxford, where she investigated the relationship between worry and insomnia. She founded Trouble Sleeping in 2006. I can't wait to chat with her today. Welcome to the LiveFitNow podcast, Dr Lindsay Browning.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome. I'm very much looking forward to this conversation. So I would really love to start by just finding a little bit more about you, your story, and why you do what you do.
Yeah, sure. So I studied psychology at university, and then I got a master's in neuroscience. And then for my doctorate, I specifically worked in a sleep lab investigating sleeping issues like insomnia and treating people who had difficulty with their sleep. Which was fascinating, and that was Oxford. And then once I finished that, as well as being 8.5 months pregnant at the time, I then had a baby and then started Trouble Sleeping, where I would help people with their sleeping issues, because at the time, sleep, back in 2006, sleep was really an emerging field that people were starting to take seriously, and there really weren't very many people looking at treating people with sleeping problems. So I thought I wanted to do that and help people.
What was it about sleep that initially attracted you? Did you sort of get an opportunity to study it in a module, or was it just something that sort of turned up for you?
Yeah, I've always been fascinated by sleep. I love dreams. As a kid, I would try and make sure that I formulated and controlled my dreams before I went to sleep, so you could have that sort of secret extra world during your sleep. I've always been a really good sleeper, so I've never had any issue with poor sleep. So it wasn't that got me interested. It's just sleep is a bit like space. There's so much that we don't know about it. It's such an unexplored new scientific field. It's just fascinating. And on top of that, once I realized how many problems people had with their sleep and what huge impact it had on their mental health and their physical well-being, it was just a no-brainer really to use that and help people, to really help them. That's what I absolutely love. By helping people with their sleep, you transform their lives, and it doesn't really take a lot of intervention. Often it's I just see them the once, and then I can make a huge difference to their sleep, which is amazing. I love that.
It's really empowering. And do you find that it's mostly based around habits?
Well, when people start to sleep poorly, there's loads of reasons that you'll start to sleep poorly. I mean, even I'm a really good sleeper, but right now during the coronavirus thing, I've had not great sleep. I've woken up worrying about my job, my health, my family's health, all that kind of stuff, which is normal. It's normal to not sleep well when you're going through stress. But what isn't normal is then for that short-term stressful bad sleep to then go on long-term. And that's what I really help people with, whether that short-term sleep problem was caused by worry, or whether it was caused because you've just had a baby and then the baby's waking up throughout the night, or caused by a jet lag. Often people will start having really bad sleep after they've come back from a holiday in Australia, and their body is just on the wrong time zone. And once you start to sleep poorly, people often will start to worry about their sleep and start to control it and start to fix it. And that's the killer. That's the really big problem that you have to intervene and help them with. Because unlike most things in life, if you've got a problem, then how you resolve it is by doing a bit of research and trying really hard at it. If you want to get fit, you've got to go to the gym, you've got to eat more healthily, you've got to focus more on your activities and what you're doing and the choices that you're making. Sleep is completely the opposite. The more you start to think about sleep and worry about sleep and try and control it, absolutely the worse it gets. So it's fascinating, because I see loads of people who are really high achieving, like alpha type people who are all about problem solving. If there's a problem, right, I can do this, I can fix it. And with sleep, they'll use the same approach that works really well in the rest of their lives to help them. If you're a successful business person, the harder you work, the more successful you'll be. But the harder you try to sleep, the more your anxiety goes up, the more your adrenaline, the more your arousal. And of course, all of those things are exactly what stops you going to sleep. So it's amazing that what helps you in the rest of your life does not help you with sleep. So it's about unpicking that.
It makes complete sense as well, because it's very much true. And actually in the rest of life, that application of the skills you can do in one thing is usually really helpful. In fact, that's often what I talk to people about. Like, it helps solve the problems. But it's fascinating to know that actually that is the exact opposite thing that you need to do. And it does make sense, because then you're going to bed worrying about not sleeping, and you end up not sleeping, and then it's just a vicious cycle, completely out of sync.
Yeah.
You mentioned actually about say, for example, jet lag. Are there any particular things that people can do if they are crossing time zones to try and keep themselves in a better synchronization?
Yeah, definitely. So your flight time is important if you've got the luxury of choosing when to fly. It's all about trying to get into the time zone you want to be in as quickly as possible. So if you're going from UK time to, let's say, I don't know, Russian time, then you want to start moving towards that new time frame. So you'd be waking up earlier than you're used to and going to bed earlier. So before you even make the business trip or the social trip, whatever reason you're going, if you start going to bed a little bit earlier, and before you even make that flight, then you're going to be going slightly towards that time zone, which is going to help. Really helpful with kids as well. The worst thing is when you go on holiday with your kids and you're okay, but the kids are not in the right time zone and they're having a meltdown when you're trying to have a lovely dinner at the local tavern. So that's not good. So try and start to get towards that new time zone before you travel. And then as soon as you get to the destination, then make sure you get outside. The most important thing you can do, get outside in the destination where you are at between 10 and 12. So 10 a.m. to 12 midday, get outside and get sunshine, because it's sunshine that regulates your circadian rhythm. That's the most important trigger that tells your brain and your body what time it is. And when we see sunlight, bright sunlight, our brain knows it's the middle of the day. So if you get to your destination and you get outside and get that midday sunshine in a new destination, your brain is already going, oh, hold on, oh, it must be midday. So we need to be sleepy about 8-10 hours from now. We should be really alert right now. And also try to eat at the same times that you would do if you were in your destination. So have breakfast at breakfast time in, say, Russia, lunch at lunchtime in Russia, dinner at dinner time. Don't eat on the plane if that's in the old UK time zone, because try and get onto the new time zone as quickly as possible. That also helps to shift your circadian rhythm forwards or backwards, whichever way you wanted to go.
Fantastic. And do you think you could just briefly summarize what circadian rhythm is, just for people that don't necessarily know what it means?
So if you think about it, when we were cavemen, we wandered around and we didn't have watches. So our bodies learned to know when it was daytime and when it was nighttime, so that our bodies naturally would make us be really alert and awake during the day and really not alert and sleepy at night, because we want to sleep during the night when it's dark and we can't get anything done. We want to be awake and alert during the day. So as well as our eyes seeing vision, so we can look at, read and look at people and recognize things, there's a separate pathway that goes from our eyes into our brains, into a different part of our brains that's not vision, that its sole job is to monitor light levels. And of course, the most light that we see in the day is always at midday. Naturally, the sun is its brightest at midday. It's nearest us, it gives us the most lux, the most light at midday. So our brains are hardwired to know when our eyes see the most light of the day, that must be midday. And it goes, great, midday, let's be really awake right now, and let's produce a hormone called melatonin about 8 to 10 hours from now, because that's when it'll be nighttime, and that will help us be sleepy and go to sleep, which is brilliant. That's how it's supposed to work. And for most of us in the UK, we won't even realize that we have a circadian rhythm. It's not something that you even think about until you go to America or you go to Asia, and then suddenly your brain is telling you to go to sleep when the country you're in is saying it's morning. And that's when our circadian rhythms, we start to realize what that is, because our body is still telling us it's nighttime when the country we're in is daytime. So the circadian rhythm that we have, our 24-hour clock, is really valuable, but it can go wrong if we're getting light at the wrong time. And that's why I said about with jet lag, get light at sort of late morning, midday, because that's when we want the light to be its maximum. But you can artificially give yourself the wrong kind of light later in the day. It is not helpful. And that's with blue light that people might have heard about, coming from like phones and LED devices. So blue light is the particular frequency of light that our brains are looking for to monitor how light it is. And your phone, right by your head, right by your face, is absolutely flooding you with this blue light, which at midday doesn't matter. But imagine that right at bed, you're scrolling through Twitter and your brain is being flooded with this blue light at 9-10 o'clock at night. So your brain is saying, oh, hold on a minute, we've got loads of blue light, it must be the middle of the day, we need to suppress melatonin, we need to wake up, because it's actually, we thought it was nighttime, but we're clearly wrong because we've got all this light, it must be the middle of the day. So that's really unhelpful. That's why you should put night mode on your phones. And that's also why shift workers can really struggle, because they're getting light at the wrong time from when they're working. So what you can do is be really mindful of that light, and try and wear shades when you don't want to see light. And you can even get an artificial light box, like a daylight bulb or a daylight lamp, to flood you with fake daylight, so that it'll make you more awake and alert when you want to have your midday. Really helpful with night shift workers. Hope that helps.
Yeah, no, perfect. And I guess for one of these things, so by obviously if you're on a shift worker, you can see that they have completely shifted, often completely back to front, so they're up all night and asleep all day. But actually, by having so many pieces of technology around us that are emitting blue light, are we basically creating elongated days that our bodies can't adjust to? So is it about us trying to, and how, I know obviously you said pop it onto night mode, but how long before bed is that a good idea? Is there sort of a recommended time?
Well, I would say at least sort of 2 hours before bed, but it could be more. And my phone goes on at 7 o'clock. It goes onto night mode automatically, just takes away all that blue light. But really, it's just about boosting your daytime sunshine in the middle of the day, and decreasing it as we come towards night, just like the sun. Just think about the sun, we want to, when we wake up in the morning, open the curtains wide to flood ourselves with loads of light to help us wake up, have lots of sunlight at midday, and then let it naturally diminish as the day goes on. If you're in an office, the worst thing you can do is work through lunch and not leave the office, because then your brain isn't seeing that sunshine, it's not getting that stimulation. And we want, our circadian rhythm helps us to be really, really awake and alert during the day, and then really sleepy at night. If you're getting light all through the day, and with your phones or your iPads or your laptops, you're getting light and your body doesn't really know when daytime is and when nighttime is, then your circadian rhythm just is quite flat. So you'll never feel quite as alert and awake during the day, and you'll never feel quite as sleepy at night. So we want to be really awake during the day and really sleepy at night, which you can help by regulating when you get that light.
Absolutely, that makes sense. And I was just thinking, actually, as you said that, I'm assuming something that comes into play with this is caffeine, because I'm guessing if we're not in tune with our circadian rhythm, we might be feeling tired when we're not necessarily expecting to, and then not sleep as well. And I'm guessing caffeine can have a negative impact on that.
So caffeine doesn't affect our circadian rhythm, but it does absolutely affect our alertness. Now, caffeine, I actually think it's like a miracle drug. If you imagine, if you're driving home late at night on the motorway, 11 o'clock at night, you've got to get home and you're really sleepy, caffeine is your best friend. You absolutely should pull over, have a large cup of coffee, have a 10-minute nap in the car, then get back on the road. Because caffeine helps to make our bodies not understand that we're tired. It's really clever. We have a thing called our sleep drive. And the longer we've been awake, the more our drive for sleep, our need for sleep increases. So if you think you've slept really well, you wake up in the morning, your drive for sleep's really low. As the day goes on, it just increases and increases and increases, and you fall asleep, it empties out again. But imagine it's 11 o'clock at night, you're driving home, your sleep drive is really high, you have a large coffee, and your brain can't tell how full your sleep drive is. So it goes, oh, actually, I thought we were tired, but we're not, because our sleep drive is 0, so we must be fine. And you feel much more alert. So caffeine is brilliant for that. However, what the problem is that caffeine has a 6-hour half-life. So 6 hours after that coffee or tea or Coke, half the caffeine is still in your system. So if you imagine you've driven home, you've got home safely, brilliant, you lie down in bed, your brain is still wide awake because that caffeine is saying, we don't need to sleep, we don't have any need for sleep whatsoever, let's stay awake. So it's important to maybe try and have caffeine more in the morning if you're going to drink tea or coffee. Obviously, you can not have any caffeine at all and not have any artificial sort of stimulant, but if you are going to have tea or coffee, then try and have it before midday or at least before 2. I would really not recommend having it in the late afternoon, and definitely not in the evening, because it's going to definitely stop you from sleeping as easily as if you hadn't had it.
I guess I would like to ask you now are there any ways that we as a society can tweak and change how we prepare for sleep? Or is it very much based on an individual level, or is it something that we kind of need to bring together into one package?
Yeah, so as well as reducing our light levels towards nighttime, which will help our brains, our bodies think, oh, it's starting to get nighttime, we should produce melatonin and start to feel sleepy. It's about shutting down your brain towards night as well. I use the example, think about when you were kids or when you have young children, you give them a whole bedtime routine, bath, milk, story, bed, and the whole hour or two before bed is geared up for making sleep, this atmosphere be calm, the lights are dim, your voices are quiet, you've got bath, lavender bath oils, use the same words, you do the same things, and then the child or baby is yawning, and you are, before they're even in bed, because everything is so lovely and ready for sleep. Whereas when we get to be an adult, we just chuck all that out the window. We're just like working super hard, we're multitasking on our laptop, replying to emails, tidying the house, getting everything ready, shut the laptop, next to bed, lie down, and then you wonder why you can't sleep, because your brain is still absolutely whirring with all of that stuff because you haven't had that wind down time. So it's much easier said than done. I totally get that, and I'm a really busy working mother myself with a dog. I've got a lot of stuff to do, and it seems quite tempting to stay up really late replying to emails and getting everything ready, but it just means that you're going to struggle to sleep because you're not winding down. So do try and, at least an hour before bed, turn the devices off, start dimming the lights, start to just transition from busy working day into nighttime, so that your brain starts to calm down, your body starts to relax, and sleep will be a lot easier if you do that.
Do you think it's a good idea, where possible, and I know it's not always possible in these times, but to have a routine, to go to bed at the same time, to wake up at the same time every day? Does that help with sleep pattern?
Yeah, it's one of the simplest things you can do. It's a bit boring, I totally get that, going to bed every day at the same time and wake up at the same time every day. But for your physical health, your sleep health, it's one of the best things you can do. Just like thinking about jet lag, or when the clocks change. How much are we confused, our body's confused by a 1 hour clock change? We really are. There's a spike in heart attacks just from that 1 hour, a spike in road traffic accidents, as well as the fact that everyone struggles, and let alone parents with young kids who don't understand how to tell the time, and they're still getting up at the wrong time. So even a 1 hour change has a huge difference. So if you are during the week going to bed at 10 because you've got to get up early to go to work, obviously not right now during the lockdown, but when we get out of it, and then at the weekend you want to go to bed at 1 or 2 because you're out partying or you're seeing friends, and then you want to sleep in until 9, and then the next Sunday night you want to go back to bed again at 10. Our bodies cannot, our circadian rhythms cannot move that quickly. So it's really hard. If you have the same bedtime, same wake time 7 days a week, it will be far easier to fall asleep and wake up, and your bodies will love you for it, even though it's a bit boring. But being healthy isn't the most exciting thing. Eating salad is really good for you, but it maybe isn't as tempting as a chocolate cake.
So true. And actually, I was thinking during that, does it make any difference as to how much sleep we should be getting, whether it's summertime or winter, or rather when the days are longer and when the days are shorter? Do we actually need more or less sleep depending on the season?
Well, there is some debate with that, but naturally when we were cavemen and we didn't have clocks, we would sleep a lot more in the winter than we would in the summer, because in the summer there's more daylight to wake us up, but also it makes sense that in the summer we want to make use of all those extra daylight hours to get the crops and do all those things, whereas in the winter it doesn't make so much difference. But nowadays, now that we have, generally our jobs, we have to work 7, 8, 9 hours a day, whether it's December or June. So we kind of need to be trying to get the same amount of sleep each night. And ideally, for a working age adult, you'd want to get between 7 and 9 hours sleep a night. That's kind of the magic window. But 3/4 of Brits in a recent survey said they got 6.5 hours or less. So that means 3/4 of people in the UK right now, or when that survey was taken, were getting 6.5 hours or less, which is nowhere near that 7 to 9 Goldilocks zone of where we want to be. And it's kind of a societal pandemic, I think, of people not prioritizing sleep. They're prioritizing everything else. And the worst thing that I hear is when people say, you should get up 2 hours early to go to the gym. And I totally, absolutely think people should go to the gym. Going to the gym, exercise is brilliant for your overall health and for your sleep. But don't sacrifice your sleep to go to the gym. I'm sure you can find a time to go to the gym when you're not looking through Twitter for that extra hour or not looking at that third Netflix episode. There is time that you can find. Don't take it away from your sleep, because sleep is so important. It helps to reduce depression, it helps to reduce anxiety, it lowers your cancer risk, it lowers heart disease risk, it lowers your dementia risk, it increases your immunity, and it increases your memory. It has so many benefits. Why would you want to sacrifice that? I mean, you want to have both things. It's like robbing Peter to pay Paul. If you're getting up and sacrificing sleep to be healthy and go to the gym, then you're just, you're taking from one pot and putting it into the other. You need to improve both. You need to go to the gym and sleep enough.
Because you're actually sacrificing your recovery time, because obviously, as much as the gym workout is important, the body is repairing from that throughout the rest of the day, particularly during sleep, because I believe that it's different portions of the night are repairing different parts of the body.
Yeah, so deep sleep is when your body physically repairs itself the most, and that's at the start of the night. So if you increase your exercise levels and up your exercise, then you'll need more deep sleep, because your body will need that to repair, and that will, in consequence, help you to sleep deeper and better and for longer, and you'll feel more refreshed. So one thing, if you're not sleeping well, start doing more exercise, and you'll improve your sleep, which is a good thing to do for your health as well as your sleep.
It's about finding a balance, I guess, isn't it? And as much as I'm guessing it quite obviously is a problem for a lot of people, that they actually start to get stressed because they've heard this 7 to 9 hour block of sleep we're meant to be getting every night, and they know they're not getting it, and they're getting more worked up about it. So I guess it's just trying to find a way, as you say, to get into that routine of trying to slowly build up your sleep and prioritizing that over watching that next episode on Netflix, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. And and it's the 7 to 9 isn't that you have to be in that zone. There's a continuum, and some people will need less and some people will need more. And the worst thing is when, let's say, you are a 7 hours a night person, but your partner is a 9 hours a night person, and that 2 hours difference is big. And often I see couples who are trying to be the one when they're not. So somebody who might think they have insomnia because it takes them 2 hours to fall asleep each night, but actually that's because their partner sleeps for 9 hours, but they only need 7. So they just genuinely need to go to bed 2 hours later or get up 2 hours earlier, because that's all they need. So it's about knowing what your ideal sleep is and working towards that. And it might be 6.5 hours, or it might be 9 hours, or it might be 9.5. Wherever you feel good, that's your ideal sleep.
And is there such a thing as early bird and night owl?
Absolutely, definitely. Without a doubt. So now that's really interesting, because societally, we think that early birds are the great ones. You get up early, go to bed early, you're doing a good thing. If you're up bright and early, the early bird catches the worm. Early risers are high achievers, and going to bed early is a sign of taking care of yourself, that kind of thing. But in reality, what's the difference between going to bed later and sleeping in. But of course we think, sleeping in is being lazy. If you have a lie-in, you're being lazy, but it's just getting your sleep, whether it be in the earlier part of the night or the later part of the night. And it is hard to change who you are, but you can tweak it with light, a bit like I said before. So if you are a night owl, for example, then maybe try and get bright light a bit earlier in the day. And if you're a lark who's falling asleep too early than you want to, then get bright light a bit later in the day to kind of push your circadian rhythm a bit later, to help you fall asleep a bit later and wake up a bit later.
Great advice. It's so simple, really, isn't it? I mean, and do you think it's very much just how our circadian rhythms are set up, or do you think there are some habits that are linked with the whole night owl and lark thing as well? I mean, do you think some people might think they are one or the other just by nature of their routine, because they stay up late or they get up early, and then therefore it pushes them into that cycle, even though not necessarily biologically?
Yeah, so I think to know if you're really a night owl or an early person, it's not really about your bedtime and wake time, really. It's when you feel most alert and awake. So if you wake up in the morning and you feel really on it and buzzing, you want those important meetings first thing in the morning at work. Whereas if you're a night owl, which I am, I'd be really happy to have a really important work call at 8 p.m. because I'm on. So it's about where your body is most alert and most thriving. And so it's not just about what time you go to bed, but it's about when you peak with your ability to function and do really well. And if you are somebody who functions really well earlier in the morning, then do the difficult stuff first thing in the morning. Don't put those important or difficult tasks until 4 or 5 p.m. because you're not going to be your best then. Whereas if you're a night owl or a night person, then in the morning, go through your mundane stuff that doesn't really need in your brain, and then make your difficult tasks later on in the day when your alertness is kind of like peaking.
Is there any way you'd recommend for us to figure out what we are? Is it some sort of diary a good idea, or?
Yeah, you could do. Absolutely. No one asked me that question before. I think I would imagine most people know. I mean, there are loads of people who are just in the middle, who are just typical people who just wake up in the morning and they're normally alert, and then they'll go to bed at normal time. I think it's only more of the extremes that you'll start to notice it more. I mean, I certainly, like I said, I'm a night owl. I certainly notice it a lot more when my husband's away, because he's not a night owl, so he keeps me in check, going to bed at a reasonable time. When he's gone away in business, I'll start to eke towards going to bed at 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning even, because I'm just on and I'm buzzing and I don't want to stop. But that's not very healthy. It's not good for me. And then because I've got children, they wake me up. They don't suddenly start to sleep in until 9 or 10. So then, in a very short space of time, I realize, goodness, I'm not getting enough sleep. So you have to put those things back in place and go to bed, force yourself to go to bed a bit earlier.
I guess that's society, isn't it, in a lot of ways, because we have so much structure to as much as people are more flexible now, but the 9 to 5, the school hours. So I guess even if we do have an extreme end of the scale, we are forced into unless you're a shift worker, onto quite similar circadian rhythms for that reason.
Yeah, definitely. So that's why I say most people are probably waking up at the same time and going to bed at the same time each night, but it's where their peak of alertness happens. So for sure, if you wanted to have a 7 a.m. meeting with me, I would not be my best. I would much rather be later in the day. But other people, they wake up and they're just on, they're buzzing. So it's kind of where that is.
Yeah.
It's but you can change it just in the same way that you can't change your night owlness or larkness, but you can change your wake time and night time, just the regularity, in the same way that you do when you go to another country and you're jet lag. That's the same thing. You can adjust your bedtime and wake time just by being quite strict and having an alarm and waking up with the alarm and going to bed at a regular time. You can help to tweak it that way.
What do you think of those the clocks that gradually mimic a sunrise? Are they successful at helping with that?
They are lovely, but they're also quite expensive. So I'm a fan of things that you can do that are for minimum cost. So yeah, if you've got money to spend, then by all means get one of those clocks, or get that wake you up with the sunlight, because it is definitely a good thing. But equally, you can just open your curtains when you wake up. That's free. So they are good, but I don't routinely recommend them because most people don't have money to burn. So if you have money to burn, brilliant, get one, they're great. But if you don't, then I wouldn't worry about it and just open the curtains, and that's just as good.
It's not a necessity, which is always a good thing.
Yeah.
So what are the most common problems that people come to you for? What's the thing that's driven them to think, I need to get some help?
Yeah, so often people will have had something stressful, but like I talked about before, that started them sleeping poorly, but then they haven't ever got back to sleeping well again. Then maybe that be an exam stress or a bereavement or something happened. They start to sleep poorly, or they've had kids who woke them up throughout the night, and now the kids are sleeping through, but they're still sleeping poorly. And there's things like, once someone started sleeping poorly, almost invariably they're worrying about their sleep, because you're not sleeping well. So you think, oh, I didn't sleep well last night, so I really have to try hard to sleep well tonight. And of course, what happens when you try hard to sleep? Your adrenaline goes up. If you imagine you're lying in bed and you think, right, I need to sleep now because I've got an important meeting tomorrow, or I didn't sleep well last night, so I need to fall asleep well tonight. So what happens is you're lying in bed and your attention, your alertness is increased. You're like hyper aroused, you're hyper alert, hyper vigilant. Your brain is looking for things that might be a threat to your sleep. So you'll be able to hear sounds even more that you wouldn't normally pay attention to, because maybe that dripping tap's going to keep you from falling asleep. Or you'll pay attention to your own body. You'll hear your own heartbeat. Oh, my heart's racing. That's not good. Or you're monitoring your own body for signs of falling asleep. So you might be about to fall asleep and you're like, was I nearly asleep then? That would be good. And of course, by monitoring your body and trying to pay attention to it, you're just waking yourself up. So when someone's sleeping poorly, they start to be really worried about their sleep and hypervigilant. So it's about helping them to relax, to stop monitoring their sleep, basically to stop them trying to sleep. Trying to sleep is never a good thing. You know, if I asked you to sleep right now, I said, right, I want you to sleep right now, go. It's impossible. No one can sleep on demand. So as soon as you are in bed trying to sleep on demand, you're increasing that adrenaline, you're increasing that anxiety. There's no way you can sleep. So it's about taking away those worries that are in your mind at night, keeping you alert, and especially those worries about sleep, and just relaxing you, calming you down so that sleep just happens. It's just about allowing sleep to happen without trying to force it, because it will never happen when you try and force it.
And what about naps? Are naps a useful or an unuseful tool, or does it completely depend on the individual?
It completely depends on the situation. So if somebody has not slept well the night before because they struggled to sleep, because they're really stressed about everything and they couldn't sleep, and they eventually fell asleep at 3 and they woke up at 7 or 8 with their alarm, then I would suggest to them, try not to nap. Try and make it through the day if you can, safely, if you're not going to be dangerously sleepy at all. If you can make it through the day without napping, then the next night you're going to be much more sleepy and it'll be much easier to fall asleep. If you didn't sleep well last night because your kids were sick on you in the middle of the night, which has happened to me, or maybe your roof collapses, or something external stops you sleeping, or maybe you didn't sleep well last night because you're very jet lagged, then that's a different scenario. And in which case, having a nap to catch up on that sleep would be really helpful. And also, having a nap, like in Spain, on the continent, people have a siesta. That's the normal thing people do. Naps are actually really brilliant for helping you feel more refreshed and more awake. But it's about having them at the right time so that they don't interfere with sleep later. So if, like I said, if you slept really poorly because you're a poor sleeper, then napping is going to diminish your drive for sleep that night. So it's not a great thing to try and keep doing. But if you are just a bit sleep deprived because of life, because you've been too busy and you haven't had time for sleep, naps are brilliant. Try and have them around midday, or just after lunch, when a typical siesta would be, because that's when our bodies are naturally designed to have a nap. In fact, our circadian rhythm wants us to have a nap at that point. But try and have a nap that is between 20 to 40 minutes at the most, or an hour and a half. If you nap for about an hour, you're going to find that you've gone into a deep sleep. And then when you wake up, because your alarm goes off after that hour, you're going to wake up and you'll feel horrible. You'll be so groggy and disorientated, and you'll feel like death. So basically, you have to have a full sleep cycle, which is about an hour and a half, or a 20 to 10 minute, even 10-minute power nap. 20-minute nap would be great. 40 minutes at the most during the day, and then you'll feel much more refreshed. You'll make it through to the evening, and your sleep drive will still be quite high. But in an ideal world, especially right now when we're in lockdown, have a nap in your bed, because your bed, you want it to be a place for sleep. So it's really good to build that strength relationship that your bed is a place for sleep. If you nap on the sofa, then your sofa becomes a place where your body wants to sleep, which isn't as good. And often I see people with insomnia who can sleep on their sofa fine, but as soon as they get into their bed, they can't sleep in their bed, because their bed has become this negative place where they don't sleep. So one of the best ways of tweaking that is by not allowing yourself to sleep anywhere except for in your bed. So yeah, I'm a big fan of, a daytime nap is great, especially for a good sleeper at night. I'm a great sleeper at night. I love a daytime nap, but I'll try and make it, a short nap, or if there was some luxury that I could have an hour and a half nap, then that's what I would do. But don't have an hour nap. You'll feel horrid. Never do that.
Thank you. That's very useful. And does the hour and a half, so if you go into a deep sleep, would that add to your daily tally of, so if you're only say getting 6 hours at night, but then you get yourself an hour and a half nap in the day, does that add to your proper sleep tally?
Absolutely. And I see so many people who tell me, I only sleep 5 hours a night, but they always have an hour and a half to 2 hour nap in the afternoon. I'm like, but you're getting 7-8 hours sleep every day. And they're like, oh yeah, I hadn't thought of it like that. If you think about in Spain with the 2 hour siesta, they only sleep for about 5 hours a night in Spain, because that's all you need in total. That 24-hour period you need between 7 and 9 hours. So don't discount naps. They count towards it. Just like when you have a baby, you talk about their daily sleep total. You don't just talk about their sleep at night that counts. It's the whole day that counts. And there's a lot of thought and scientific sort of evidence, historical evidence, to show that years ago, like 200 years ago, we used to sleep at night in 2 blocks. We used to have a first sleep and a second sleep. So people would sleep for 3 hours, and then they would be awake for an hour or two in the middle of the night, and then they'd sleep for another 3 hours. And we think it's just society and our 9 to 5 way of life that squashed that into a shorter period of one sleep. So I see a lot of people who wake up in the night and then are worried that their sleep is disrupted. And it's about understanding that that's normal, and as long as you get back to sleep again, that's not a problem. Don't worry about that.
I guess that makes sense from what you were saying. If an hour and a half is a sleep cycle, so they have like 2 sleep cycles, do something, and then have 2 more sleep cycles.
And if you think about evolutionarily, years and years ago, 100 years ago, that would be really useful, because you want to check in the middle of the night that no animals have come to attack you, or where are my kids? Is the fire still lit? Actually, that's a really useful thing to check. At the moment, modern days, I have a house that has locked doors and I have central heating. I know my kids haven't run away in the middle of the night, and no bears have come to attack me, and we're warm enough, so I don't need to have that check in the middle of the night.
Absolutely, it does make so much sense. And I guess if we can get ourselves into a good routine, our bodies kind of know by itself. I think on one hand, I think we do need to think about it, but on the other hand, I wonder if we actually overthink about these things, and actually intuitively our body would do all this. If we took everything of our society away, our bodies would just do this. We would know how much sleep. If we were sleepy, we would sleep, and if we were awake, we would get up and do stuff. And I think perhaps we've just kind of lost tune with ourselves a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. Couldn't agree more. Yeah, definitely.
And so I'd really love to ask you now is, if you could set up sort of what would be a good routine if we're trying to get into a better sleep pattern, what sort of things should we be doing in the evening or in the hours leading up to sleep?
Yeah. So in an ideal world, you'd stop on being on your phone, that kind of thing, about an hour before bed. Now, the reason for that, you can put night mode on and then it won't give you the negative light. It's not all about the light. It's also about stimulation. So if you're on your phone there's two things that are distracting with your phone. One is if you're on your phone, it might have your work emails. You might have, text from your friend who you've had a row with, or your partner, things that will stimulate your brain to start worry or anxiety, that kind of thing. If you don't look at your phone, you won't have those work messages or those friendship messages that might be stressing you. But secondly, things like Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, all these things, scrolling things, they are designed to be addictive. They are designed to keep going. Even games, there are people paid a lot of money to make these apps as addictive as possible. So therefore, you're in bed, you're scrolling through Twitter or you're scrolling through Facebook, and you don't think to yourself, oh, I should go to bed, I should go to sleep soon, because you're just in the zone and you're just scrolling. And you're not scrolling through anything of any importance. No one has ever said, wow, I'm so glad I stayed awake last night for 2 hours and was on Twitter for 2 hours. No one ever says that. But nevertheless, you're just doing it. And then before you realize, oh yeah, goodness, it's like 11:30. I should have been in bed an hour ago. That's why it's not useful right before bed. If you're doing something intentional, that's different. But if you're just wasting time, just staring at your phone, what are you doing? It's like just sitting there eating a whole bag of cookies mindlessly. Intentional eating or intentional doing something is much better. So put the phone away, an hour before bed. And then get tomorrow ready. Get your clothes ready, get everything ready. Have a bath before bed would be perfect. So a bath before bed is so helpful because as we fall asleep, our body temperature drops naturally by itself. That's what happens when we fall asleep. And that's why it's hard to sleep in a heat wave, because in a heat wave, your bedroom's really hot and your body temperature can't drop because the room's too hot. If you have a hot bath, maybe with some lavender oils, some kind of essential oils, then your temperature will be increased. As well as the physical relaxing that's happened, you'll be hotter because it was a hot bath. You get out the bath and your body starts to cool down, which totally mimics what happens as you fall asleep, meaning that you'll start to feel sleepy. It's a brilliant thing. That's why we give babies a bath, It's what you always do with babies and kids, and then at some point we just stop. When we're adults, we just think, we don't need to do that anymore. But we do. And then I would recommend that you have some food before bed. Now, a lot of people, for weight loss, or that you have lots of diets, or only eat within a 12-hour window and that kind of thing. But if you go to bed hungry, your body is going to be alert. It's going to be anxious, because biologically, if we're hungry, what happens? Our adrenaline goes up. Our brain's thinking, oh, we must find food because we're hungry. If you're alert and anxious, you're not going to sleep as easily. That's why we fall asleep so lovelily after a big Sunday lunch of roast beef, because we're like, oh, I feel so satisfied and sleepy. You're soporific. So I would say eat something before bed, about half an hour before bed. Maybe ideally would be a bowl of porridge. It's got complex carbohydrates, slow release energy to give you energy throughout the night. It's got some dairy, which has tryptophan in it, which helps promote sleep. And you could top it with some kiwi fruit, which has also been shown to help sleep. So I'm not talking about a big thing, just a small bowl of porridge before bed to give you something in your stomach to make you feel, yeah, I'm fine, I'm relaxed, I can go to sleep. I see so many kids that go to bed hungry, and they're just too hungry to sleep, and they're doing that yo-yo thing, coming up and downstairs to the parents, Mommy, I'm hungry, and they're like, go to bed, it's bedtime. But genuinely, if they haven't eaten anything since 5 o'clock that evening when they had tea, and now it's 8 o'clock at night, they could well be just too hungry for sleep. So I'd say put the phones away, dim the lights, have a bath, have a little bowl of porridge, get all clothes ready for the morning, and try and make your bedroom clear of clutter. If you're lying in bed and you can see a big pile of work over there you're supposed to do, or you can see the exercise bike in the corner that you didn't do an exercise on today, and you're like, oh, I failed, I'm rubbish. All these things are just going to be in your head, things you should have done, you feel bad, it's hard to sleep. And then have a cool bedroom, dim, dark curtains, quiet, and then you can sleep and it'll be fine.
Should we turn the lights out a little bit before bed?
Yeah, so dim the lights, maybe have some candles would be lovely, or just turn the dimmer switch down. Generally speaking, house lighting isn't that disruptive to sleep. It doesn't have the intensity blue light that is negative, but still it's nicer and it's helpful if we have some, you know, lower lighting. If you really want to go all out, you could buy blue light goggles that you put on, that are glasses that take away all the blue light. If you were a top athlete, I would suggest doing that. It helps you to, gives you that edge. But for normal people, you know, I'm not a top athlete by a long stretch of the imagination, so I just dim the lights a bit, put some candles on, just to generally have the atmosphere of it being a bit relaxing and bedtime.
So we need to take it back to childhood, back to those routines that we had as kids,
Absolutely.
that for some reason we just lose hold of.
Definitely.
Fantastic. And are there any particular common myths within your field that you would like to debunk right now, because we've all got the wrong end of the stick and we can put a little bit of clarity on it?
Yeah, well, one, I'm not sure if it's a myth in my field, but a thing that a lot of people speak to me about, that they're worried about, is waking in the night. So people, lots of people, they get a Fitbit or an Apple Watch or something like that that tracks your sleep. And then they look at their sleep in the morning and it says, oh, you had 25% deep sleep last night and you woke up 3 times. And they think, oh, I better speak to Dr. Browning and she can help me improve my sleep. So if I'm, Dr. Browning, can you help me? My sleep's disrupted. I'm waking up 3 times a night and I'm only getting 25% deep sleep. And I need to get a whole night of deep sleep. Genuinely, I've had multiple calls, word for word like that. And to which I tell them, everyone wakes up at least 3 times a night, if not 4. That is part of sleep. We have these things called sleep cycles, and every time you go through a sleep cycle, you'll wake up. Waking up throughout the night is normal. You won't even realize you've woken up unless you're told by your watch, basically, or unless you've been awake for 5 or more minutes and you realize you're awake and you go to the loo. That isn't disrupting your sleep. Sleep does not happen in a continuous block of 7 hours. It happens in these waves and you do wake up throughout it. Secondly, 25% deep sleep is the maximum you could possibly hope to get. I'm over 40, sadly, but I'm getting significantly less than that. I don't actually know. I don't let my watch monitor my sleep, but statistically, once you hit 40, your deep sleep decreases significantly. 65-year-olds often will have no deep sleep whatsoever. So if you have a Fitbit or watch that's monitoring your sleep and it tells you information about your sleep, that can be very damaging, because if you don't know what normal sleep looks like, then yeah, if I didn't know what normal sleep looked like, 25% deep sleep sounds terrible. It sounds like a quarter of my sleep is good, but it's not. That's just, sleep is deep sleep, light sleep, dreaming sleep. Sleep is in these 3 different phases. And if you had all deep sleep, that would be terrible. You would need to see a doctor immediately. So yeah, that's one of the sort of...
Would you suggest to just take the watch off at night and not stress about it?
I almost never. There's the only rarest occasions when I would suggest using a watch to track your sleep at night. It's almost always a negative thing. And when people come to see me and I ask them to track their sleep, I ask them to take their watches off and I ask them just to tell me their impressions of it. I don't care about their watch. I really don't. I want to know how you felt you slept, not what your watch tells you.
I couldn't agree with you more. And as much, and I've had many a conversation about those sorts of watches, and on one hand they are brilliant because you really can use them to motivate and track and just be more, a bit more self-aware. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to accuracy, they're not.
No, they're not.
Pretty much, you have, if I was wearing, I've got one on, but if you were to have 3 different watches on, they would all give me different results. And if you're really relying on them, it can drive you a little bit mad. If you're using the guide and just a bit of a way of tracking, they are really good. Mm-hmm. But quite often they just build up anxiety, because if you're not getting the results that you're expecting to get, like the heart rate monitors on them, again, they're very dodgy. Sometimes they can be pretty accurate and sometimes they can be completely off the scale one way or the other, and again it can get people worried. So yeah, I couldn't agree with you more as to not rely on that too much.
There's a thing called orthosomnia, which is the quest for perfect sleep, which is caused by sleep trackers. And basically you can give yourself insomnia because as soon as you start to try and the quest for perfect sleep, what's going to happen? You're going to stress about your sleep, you're going to try and control it, you're going to try and sleep better, increase your anxiety, make sleep worse. They're generally not helpful.
do you think it's easier for us to just either try and be less conscious of it altogether, or if we are, just try and pay a little bit more attention to ourselves and just keep our own little sleep diary?
Yeah, definitely. So keeping a sleep diary is really helpful, because it's too easy when you've had a night or two of poor sleep to think, oh, I've slept so terribly for so long, I'm such a poor sleeper, I haven't slept well for months. Whereas if you actually look back and think, oh, actually, well, out of the last week, I slept really well for 5 nights and I've only had 2 bad nights. So actually, that's not that bad. 2 nights out of 7 that have been bad, 5 nights out of 7 have been good. And that'll help calm you down, not worry so much. So yeah, keeping a little sleep diary. Once someone's had trouble with their sleep, I do recommend that they keep just a little record of how much sleep they've got a night, pretty much forever, really. Just that's all you have to do, just so you can then at any point look back and reassure yourself, yeah, I may have had a bad night last night, but look, I slept 7 hours the night before, 8 hours the night before that. It's okay. One bad night is not going to kill me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I find with a lot of clients that I work with, they do sleep better once they've had some sort of exercise in the day. And do you find that's a good way? Again, I guess everyone is different. There are obviously common themes that generally, if you're going to do, you're probably going to get similar results, but some people might find that they work really well if they've worked out earlier on in the day, but if they work out late at night, it actually wakes them up. So being aware, I guess, of what you're doing in the day and when you're doing it can also help with those things.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in an ideal world, earlier exercise is better, because if you think about it, once you've had a workout, your body's buzzing, isn't it? So it takes a while to calm down. But if that's the only time you can get to the gym after the kids are in bed, then that is still going to be better. By the time you've had a shower, come back from the gym, you will have calmed down enough. Yeah, it's not perfect, but it's much better than not going to the gym. So, life isn't about trying to be perfect. It's about being good enough. So I think it's quite important.
I couldn't agree with you more. And what do you think for your industry? And it sounds like a fascinating industry because of how much it's grown pretty much since you've started. I read myself lots of books and studies on it because I do find it so fascinating. What do you think some of the biggest issues that are either currently being looked into or you can foresee are potentially going to be problems in the future?
Well, sleep apnea is still one of those undiagnosed major issues. So sleep apnea is when people stop breathing during the night. It's really common to happen with snoring, people who may be a bit overweight. And it's a silent killer, really, apart from the snoring, which isn't silent, but it's something that most people won't even notice that they have. They'll just stop breathing repeatedly throughout the night. And then every minute, say, they'll have stopped breathing for a while, and then they'll take a big gasp of breath, wake up, go back to sleep again, stops breathing, your body realizes you stop breathing, sends a burst of adrenaline, wakes you up, take a big gasp of breath, go back to sleep again. This can happen hundreds of times throughout the night. And you won't remember that any of these awakenings happened. So you won't report in the morning, wow, I had a terrible night's sleep, but you'll wake up and you'll be exhausted. So I see people who are, they're exhausted even though they've slept for 9-10 hours, and the heavy snorers. But it's not just the fact that you're not really sleeping, it's also the fact that these repeated awakenings are causing a huge drain on your heart. They're a huge strain on your heart, sorry. So sleep apnea is something that is being more identified, and it's really important that people don't know about. And you get a CPAP machine that helps to regulate your breathing at night. It's really important. So if you have a partner or a parent or someone who you've noticed that they seem to sort of stop breathing, and then they take a gasp of air, and then they snore a little bit, and then they stop breathing, and then they gasp for air, then please, encourage them to go and speak to their doctor, because that is definitely something that needs to be looked at, because those repeated awakenings do cause a strain on your heart, which is not something that we want for anybody.
And are there any way, obviously there's lots of research going on continually, and I think you've just started a new piece during this COVID-19 time. How can we, if we are interested, get involved to help with these studies? I mean, I have heard of apps before, but is technology a good path to go down, or is it best to get in touch with professionals such as yourself or universities? How can people go about finding a little bit more about their own sleep?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you're very welcome to visit my website and take part in my study. That would be excellent. I would love that. It's troublesleeping.co.uk. Or my
Fantastic.
social media is all at Dr Browning Sleep or Dr Browning Sleep.
I'll
I like
pop it in the show
Twitter,
notes.
Facebook, awesome. But basically, there are a lot of sleep trials and things going on. There's a big sleep department at Oxford. There are a lot more sleep labs popping up in London, and there's a big sleep centre in Edinburgh. Most universities at the moment have some kind of sleep presence. So yeah, I would say the British Sleep Society is a great resource, or just look on social media for follow sleep hashtags and that kind of thing. There's a lot of information out there that you can find and be involved with.
Great. I'm going to pop links to all of those things onto the show notes that people can click through
Awesome.
and have a look if they're interested. So do you have any general tips or advice overall that you just think could help people's overall well-being? I'm guessing that you're a strong advocate of the fact that if you can get your sleep right, it's going to help with lots of other aspects of your well-being as well.
Definitely. Because if you sleep poorly, you have an increased risk of developing anxiety, depression, all sorts of illnesses. And the great thing is, if you have anxiety or depression, you're likely to have some problem with your sleep. If you just treat the sleep, the anxiety and depression decrease. So just helping your sleep will have a direct impact on all sorts of other things. Yeah, I would suggest you look at your daily schedule. Are you going to bed at a reasonable time each night? Are you getting up at a reasonable time? Are you giving yourself the opportunity to sleep for 7 to 9 hours? If you're going to bed at midnight and waking up at 6, you're never going to sleep enough. You're going to be sleep deprived. And no one sleeps well on 5 hours sleep a night. It's just not true. People who think they can train themselves to sleep in that window, it's been proven to be a fallacy. You can survive on little sleep, but you can't thrive on it. It will do long-term damage to you. So I would say prioritize sleep, absolutely. Look at your daytime routine. Make time for you. Make time to exercise. Make time to eat well, and make time to really think about what's going on in your life. If you don't take a moment to really think about your career, your relationship, what really matters to you, then your brain is going to start doing that as soon as you lie down in bed, and it will keep you awake worrying through. So make time during the daytime to really think about and process those things. Otherwise, like I said, you're going to do it at night whether you want to or not, and it might well keep you awake. And embrace your bedroom. Make your bedroom a blissful room for sleep. We always, we seem to decorate our lounge and our kitchen and all the communal areas, but then our bedroom becomes a dumping ground for laundry and all sorts of other stuff. Don't let that happen. Make your bedroom somewhere you want to go to, somewhere that's beautiful, that smells nice, that's got neutral fabrics. Blue is a great colour for a bedroom, or neutral colours. Red's not great for promoting sleep, but it's personal preference as well. You don't have to just overpaint your red bedroom blue, but statistically blue bedroom people sleep better than not. Yes, have lovely smells, clean. Think about a hotel room. It's not cluttered, it's got really good dark curtains, and it's just designed for sleep, and that will really help you overall to improve your sleep.
And how big an impact do you think alcohol can have on sleep?
Yeah, I see lots of people who, the worst thing is when you drink to help yourself sleep. Now, yeah, if you have a couple of glasses of wine, you're going to fall asleep quicker than you would have done without them. But it's not really sleep, it's called passing out. And then and then you're going to wake up later on in the night, because your sleep, alcohol, yes, it helps you fall asleep, but it disrupts your REM continuity, it disrupts your sleep. If you've ever got really drunk, which I'm sure none of your listeners have, you'll pass out for 3 hours, and then you'll wake up throughout the night for the rest of the night, because that's what alcohol does to your sleep. So if you think sleep is improved by alcohol, I guarantee you it's not. But equally, I drink alcohol, not all the time, but I do. But just having a glass or something, a glass or two, is okay. But don't drink to sleep, because that's not helpful. And don't excessively drink, because that's really not helpful.
Do you think it's something that's quite useful to remove from your routine if you are having problems with sleep. So if you're really trying to get yourself into that good routine, getting yourself back in line with your circadian rhythm, to remove that out, any sort of things that can and will hinder, which might be fine once you've got back into that routine, but if you continue to have it whilst you're trying, it's almost like you're just butting heads and sort of fighting a losing battle.
Yeah, so I do, when I see my clients, I do a sort of log and track their alcohol. If they're having maybe a glass a day or less than that, then I really wouldn't worry about that particularly. But if your sleep is characterized by you fall asleep okay, but then your sleep's really disrupted later on, then that's definitely not being helped by alcohol. And also caffeine. You know, if you're taking a long time to fall asleep and you're drinking a fair bit of caffeine, then that's maybe why that's happening. So yeah, I do recommend that people reduce their caffeine, reduce their alcohol, see how that goes, and while you're working on fixing your sleep, and then you can bring those things back in later and see how it goes. Like I'm a good sleeper. I could have a double espresso before bed and fall asleep because I've got a crazy high caffeine tolerance and I'm a good sleeper. But like I said before, right now during the corona crisis, I had a few nights of not brilliant sleep. I didn't have any caffeine late in the day then, because if you know you're not sleeping well, then why would you make it worse by having coffee after midday, that kind of thing.
It's another opportunity, I guess, just to become more in tune with ourselves, because I'm sure that, again, we have different levels of sensitivity. Like you say, some people have a much higher caffeine threshold, and some people can literally have a coffee in the morning and it still affects them when they're trying to go to sleep. So again, I guess it's trying to not necessarily just fit with societal norms by having the drink at night, having the coffee, and actually trying to think, how do I feel when I have these things or when I don't have these things? And then it all just starts to feel right, because you are sort of falling into that routine that makes you feel better.
Yeah, and decaf coffee and tea in the last few years has come on leaps and bounds. It is way better. I mean, I have decaf tea in the evenings. I rarely have a coffee after, in the evening, to be fair, but I tend to have decaf tea, and it's really good. 10, 15 years ago, decaf tea was horrible, but it's actually quite nice now. So yeah, if you might as well just replace your caffeinated drinks for decaf after 2:00, and you won't even notice it.
Absolutely, you still get to enjoy a drink. Although I did hear that there are some decaf drinks that you need to double check, because it's actually low caffeine rather than none, and it can be as much as 20% as a normal cup of caffeine. So you do need to check which ones you're going for.
And if you have 5 cups because you think that they're decaf, then you've actually had absolutely.
Absolutely. I would like to ask you now, what inspires you? What inspires you in your work and in life, and to continue with your work and what you have going forward?
Well, I just think it's so important to listen to people and help people. I do a lot of work with charities, people who work with all sorts of cancer charities, charities working with vulnerable groups, with autistic children, all these kinds of things. And what I do, when I help people individually, is is really effective, and I love it, and I help people. But not everyone can afford to do that. And CBTI, which is cognitive behavioural therapy for insomnia, is not available one-to-one on the NHS. You can get some little online things, but I'm inspired by people who are out there helping all these groups of people who can't afford to help themselves, and especially parents with kids with learning disabilities. They get put through so much. I mean, they never are off. They never get to just turn it off when you have a child without disabilities or without learning issues. You can put them to bed and they're gone. But if you have a child who is up throughout the night, kids with autism and ADHD, they often have sleeping difficulties, or people with cancer, all these things. There's never an off. And the parents are trying to help the children, as well as dealing with their own issues. If you imagine, if you are dealing with a child with severe issues, then you've got all the worries that you're dealing with, let alone trying to help the child. So I help give webinars and go and give talks to help those people. I think it's really important to to give back in society, and in as many ways as you can, you know. And I give lots of talks for like libraries where people can come and help the elderly, because elderly people have a lot of issues with sleep, which I could talk about for a long time. Or, you know, nurses and doctors gone to hospitals and given talks about sleep and shift work, because you would be really surprised that most nurses and doctors don't have any specific training on dealing with shift work, which is not super helpful because they'll have to involve a lot of shift work. So it's about making the world a better place than it was when you came into it, I think. And yeah, I have to charge people so I can pay my mortgage and you know, feed the kids and myself. But also there's a lot you can do on top of that. You know, life is not all about just money. It's about making the world a better place. And there are a lot of people who are much better at that than me, and those people inspire me.
That's really lovely, and it really is so powerful. And something like sleep really does affect every single human being. Mm-hmm. And we might go through long periods of life when we're absolutely fine with sleep, but I think it's having that forum out there where we can come and look and we can come and find help. And as you say, I think there's so many different cycles throughout life, you know, from childhood, and then when you have kids, and then the menopause, and then when you're older. And it's not really something we talk about. Like you say, I think there's a lot of stuff in society that's like, oh, you know, 4 hours sleep a night, surviving on that, you know, it's almost like a badge of honor.
Yeah.
Actually, the power of sleep is so great, and it does evolve throughout our life, and we don't really understand that much of it, particularly, you know, the general public. Of course, this is your areas of expertise, this is your passion in life, but it's just making us all a little bit more aware of how important it is, but also how empowered that we can actually be for our own sleep well-being.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you mentioned the sort of 4 hours a night. So Maggie Thatcher, Ronald Reagan, they both famously got by on, you know, 4.5 hours sleep a night, and they were so proud of it. And there's people used to write and say, if you want to be successful, like Donald Trump, he said he only sleeps for, I think it was 4.5, 5 hours a night, and thinks that people who sleep more than that are wasting their life. But you know, Maggie Thatcher and Ronald Reagan both got Alzheimer's and both died of it. And Alzheimer's and short sleep have been significantly linked, and we even can see what happens to our brain at night. You can look, there's a recent study that came out in November 2019, I believe, that's neuroimaging, so looking at the brain at night. And this study showed that our brain, when we sleep, there's a thing called cerebrospinal fluid, which is this fluid in our spine that goes up our spine, and normally it doesn't really go into our brain, but at night channels open up, and this cerebrospinal fluid physically goes into our brain, and it washes over our brain. It physically washes away amyloid plaques, basically debris that builds up in our brain. It's a bit like sort of sticky bits of yuck and debris that get built up in our brain. When we sleep, our brain physically gets washed clean of those, and those build-up of amyloid plaques are what cause Alzheimer's. If you don't sleep enough, your brain doesn't have time to do that, because it's doing a whole load of things. It's repairing your body, it's processing new memories, it's building up your immune system. Your brain does so much during your sleep, and so much that we still don't even know about. That if you don't sleep enough, it's like when you're busy, when I'm busy, my bathroom doesn't get cleaned as often as it should because I'm too busy, which, you know, for a week or two of being busy is okay, but after a month or after 2 months, that bathroom would be looking pretty disgusting, wouldn't it? Imagine after a year of not having enough time to clear a bathroom. That's not good. So if you don't have enough sleep for a week or two, then yeah, your brain will start to build up on these amyloid plaques, but eventually you'll sleep enough and it'll be okay. But if year after year of short sleep has built up, just imagine how disgusting that bathroom or how built up your brain is. So that's kind of what it's like. So please don't worry about having a small amount of sleep short term, because everyone has that. You know, we all have some kind of stressful thing that happens. We have kids that wake us up in the night. We have an elderly parent who's living with us with Alzheimer's waking us up. There's all sorts of stuff that happens in our life to give us short sleep in the short term. And that's not going to give you cancer or Alzheimer's or all these negative things. But if you don't prioritize your sleep and you don't recover from that and you don't generally have good sleep, that's where the problem is. If you're routinely going to bed at 1 a.m. and waking up at 5 or 6 because you're just too important to sleep, then you're doing long-term damage to your brain. I am sure of it.
Is it true that they've shown links between actually shortening the length of your life as well? So longevity is shortened.
Yeah, definitely. If you there is a links between not sleeping enough and early mortality, and there are for excessive long sleep. But of course, people who sleep for a long time a night, then there could be other things like going on. Maybe they have cancer, or maybe they have some immune problems. But basically, 7 to 9 hours is associated with the longest lifespan and being really healthy, basically. So try and get in that window if you can.
Such a simple and easy way to help have happier, healthier lives, hopefully.
Definitely.
So I would like to finish off by giving you the floor to share one thing that you think everyone would benefit from knowing.
I would say trying to have a set bedtime and a set wake time would be the most important thing for so many reasons. So it will help to strengthen your circadian rhythm because you're going to bed at the same time and waking up at the same time. It will help to protect you from that Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, just scrolling that is not helpful to your mental health or your sleep health. And it also will keep you getting up in the morning. When people are depressed or are going through a difficult time, often we don't get up in the morning because we're just sad. We don't want to face the day. And that can exacerbate everything, because as soon as you stop getting up, you don't get the sunshine, you don't get the social interaction. So if you regularly get up at 7, half 7, 8 o'clock, whatever your time is, no matter what, you're going to get up and you're going to face the day and you're going to have routine, and that's going to help your sleep, but it's going to help your mental health, and it's going to help your whole everything. So I would say, even though it's a bit boring, it's got so much goodness about it, having a set bedtime, set wake time.
Thank you. It's such a simple tip to share. Now, I can't thank you enough. This has been fascinating. And if I'm quite honest, I could probably keep you here for a couple more hours because there are so many areas I know that we could talk about.
I know, I could talk about sleep forever. It's true.
Oh, it's just like there's so many different areas within it that are just fascinating. And maybe at some point I could get you back on to talk about some specific subjects, perhaps the elderly, menopause. Literally the list is endless, I think. So I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank you very much for your time. I will pop links on the show notes to all of the ways of getting in touch with you, as well as the research that you're doing at the moment. I'm sure you would appreciate a few extra participants. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and have a super day.
You too. So there we have it, episode 8. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I did. I think we covered so many varied topics and Dr. Browning was fantastic. Thanks again for listening. Please don't forget to subscribe, rate the podcast, and of course, share with your friends and family. Until the next time.